To the U.S. efforts in Afghanistan. The military conducted airstrikes on areas near the city of Kunduz overnight, a day after Taliban forces captured the area from the Afghan government. Now, some suggest we should rethink our withdrawal plans scheduled for the end of 2016. Joining me now to talk more about this is Charlie Sennett. Charlie's founder and executive director of the GroundTruth Project in partnership with GBH. He has 25 years of experience reporting from the front lines in a bunch of different countries, including Afghanistan. It's good to see you, Charlie.
Good to see you, Jim.
So we're a year away, not theoretically, we're a year away, end of 2016, from virtual withdrawal from Afghanistan, according to the president. Does this change plans, this Taliban takeover, this northern province capital?
This is a big development. I mean, we have not had the Taliban take over a big northern capital and raise its white flag since 2001. This is a big deal. This is a movement by the Taliban that we have to pay attention to. But I would say very hard to get your arms around all of this. But in a nutshell, this is less about the strength of the Taliban than it is the weakness of the government. What I mean by that is the government in Kabul is deeply divided, and that can often sort of have a ripple effect and create fractures and fissures within the ethnic groupings in Afghanistan, particularly in the north.
Well, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like we have potential to have Iraq redux.
Yeah.
Is the argument is going to start being made, we're about to leave our allies, the military particularly, completely unprepared as we theoretically left them in Iraq. And as a result, President Obama, you have to rethink this notion that you want to go out having ended 2 wars. That's a plausible scenario, is it not?
I'm sad to say I think it is. I think it's a very accurate comparison. I think we really have to recognize that all the training, all the effort, all the money put into trying to get the Afghan troops, both police and army, up to speed hasn't worked. No greater proof than the way they collapsed in Kunduz when the Taliban made this surprise offensive. There is air support from the U.S. on this. I think this is going to get brought under control relatively quickly. I don't think this will last, to be clear. But I think it's a symbol. It's a symbol that the Taliban's not going to quit and the Taliban's going to keep coming. But again, what it points to more is a fractured, weak central government in Kabul than a strong Taliban.
Yeah, but the reality is, if we went ahead with this withdrawal, it's likely that post-2016, the Taliban's going to control the government anyway, isn't it?
It's likely. You know, I got to say, that's always been my understanding, and I've kind of operated with that idea, even when I was in Afghanistan earlier this year with Ben Brody, when we did Foreverstan, the ring road, right? This town, Kunduz, is on the ring road.
Brilliant videographer and veteran, I should say. He's unbelievable.
He's a really smart guy, and he really showed me around Afghanistan. I covered Kunduz in 2001. We were a little bit north of that in Mazar-e-Sharif for our reporting, but we were in the northern region. And what's happening there is interesting to watch. Yes, the Taliban is on the move, but look, this is a young, educated, millennial generation. They have smartphones. Many of the women have been to school. I don't think the Taliban is going to have a very easy time getting elected. They're not going to be able to go at this. But the Taliban, even in its origin, represents something very important, which is a moral force. I know that sounds strange to some Americans, but they absolutely were born out of the brutality and the corruption of the warlords. And it was really the Taliban that spoke out against that brutality, that corruption. That's how the Taliban grew, and it's becoming relevant again.
Can we move to a smaller story that's got a local connection that I have to say made me speechless?
Yeah.
What we have learned in the New York Times is that Afghan commanders in the military and police have had little boys as sex slaves. It's called boy play, I believe is the expression that's used there. And that our troops have been on orders not to interfere, either because it's a cultural thing or we have to respect our allies, even though they're essentially predators on young boys. Is that an accurate statement of what our policy is?
It's an accurate statement that what they don't want to do is interfere with the cultural context of this.
Pedophilia is an acceptable cultural behavior on the part of our alleged allies?
I'm sad to say, and it's terrible to say, but yes, anyone who has seen Kite Runner knows that. Right? So this is something in Afghanistan that's part of the culture. But to tie back to what we were just talking about, when I said the Taliban emerged out of the corruption and the brutality of the warlords, Mullah Omar, the founder of the Taliban, led a demonstration against the rape of children by the warlords And that's what started the Taliban. It's very interesting that this...
So the Taliban is better on this than the United States military is. I mean,
I don't want to say the Taliban's better than the United States military at anything. But I'd say on this moral issue, they are offended the way you and I would be. And it's very interesting that now this organization, this Green Beret was operating in Kunduz.
Yeah, let's just talk about this guy. This is a local guy. This is a guy from Milton, went to Milton High School. He's Special Forces Sergeant First Class Charles Martland. What he had the temerity to do was beat up one of the Afghan commanders who had sexually abused a young boy, had beaten up the young boy's mother. Now he and this other military guy, this guy Quinn, are being drummed out of our military by our military leadership because they came to the defense of sexually abused and assaulted little boys. Is that what the story is?
That is the story. The optic couldn't be worse. It's an outrage. But I think it's historically really important to look at this. Look, the fighting, the Taliban offensive happened in Kunduz. So did this situation in which the U.S. soldiers beat up this guy who was abusing, chained a young boy to his bed.
So he could be a sex slave.
This is an outrage. I think we're going to see this story in Kunduz could unravel in some very interesting ways. If indeed the Taliban was doing this attack in part because there is a sort of return to the warlords, that has great historical import and resonance, and we have to pay close attention to what's happening in the north right now. It used to be the quiet, safe place. It's becoming the place where we're really seeing the Taliban go on the offensive.
Well, you have the bigger picture. I want to end with a smaller picture. So essentially, our allies whom we train are not good enough to defend their own country, and some of those same allies are abusing young boys, and the orders of our men and women is to stand back and let it happen. Is that not a fair description of where we stand in Afghanistan?
It's a fair description of a pathetic and horrific situation. And Afghanistan has a history of brutality to children around rape that I will never understand for as long as I live. But I did see that culture in the sense that you get a lot of strange things going on and you wonder what's happening. And The Kite Runner, the book we've all read and know Afghanistan through, of course, taps right into that theme.
People should call their congresspeople and say the military should change their position on this issue.
Couldn't agree more.
Disgraceful.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much.